And welcome back to Coast to Coast. I'm George Norrie. As I mentioned, Andrew was arrested at the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland, made the claim that he was from the future, said that he had traveled back in time to prevent the LHC from destroying the world. Andy was attempting to disrupt by stopping supplies, if you can believe this, of Mountain Dew to the experiment's vending machines. Andy was seized by Swiss police after CERN security guards spotted him rooting around in bins. He explained that he was looking for fuel for his time machine, Project Pegasus, a device that resembled a kitchen blender. Andy is now the president of Project Pegasus. Here he is right now. Welcome back. How are you, Andrew?
Hi, George. I'm excellent.
Good. Tell me a little bit about what you've been doing, going back to try to disrupt CERN.
Well, this is classified information.
Now, and tell me about grabbing Mountain Dew and throwing it in a kitchen blender.
No, we were in a revolutionary time travel cylinder. Project Pegasus took me somewhere else. Now, how this is accomplished, I have no idea. Okay. It was never explained to those of us who, actually, we should say that we were getting our Project Pegasus schooling under Major Ed Dames, a Coast regular.
Our Ed Dames?
Same individual. Ed was then Scientific and Technical Intelligence Officer for the U.S. Army. My Project Pegasus, a Mars training course under Ed Dames that was held at Lawrence Junior High School in Chatsworth, California.
And what do you mean by Mars training course?
Well, Ed gave us about 3 weeks of factual instruction regarding everything that somebody who is going to be sent to Mars via jump room should know.
By Ed Dames. You're sure it's Ed Dames?
We're absolutely sure it was Ed.
You know, he has never told us this story on the program, ever.
Some of us have chosen to go forward and tell the truth. Others have taken, I think, an equally honorable approach of abiding by what they promised to do.
I mean, do you keep in touch with him now?
Yeah, Ed is one of my Facebook friends, and Ed and I actually have a lot in common. I mean, we were involved in the early days of time-space exploration by the U.S. government. But then when the U.S. government selected a direction for that time travel to go, and the destination was Mars.
And they were colonizing Mars.
Yes, 30 years ago. The United States government had decided to establish a defense regime on Mars protecting the Earth from threats from outer space. Now, I don't mean necessarily extraterrestrial beings. I mean all manner of threats to Earth, including, for example, the prospect that Earth might be hit by an asteroid.
Okay. What's the jump room, and how does it work?
It's remarkably simple. The jump room that we were using was literally the elevator to the Finlandia Motel in Mount Shasta.
Okay. I don't know where that is.
The rectilinear structure of the elevator would begin morphing into a cylinder, more of a pipe-like cylinder.
Like a portal?
Yeah, a portal.
When you got there, were you outside? What was that like?
Well, I walked out of the jump room to the right, behind a statue on the surface.
Did you see any water, running water?
There's very little water on Mars.
Did you see any humanoids or any Martians?
Yes, walking across the surface. And as I walked through this dilapidated metropolitan area, the second form of Martian humanoid would sometimes make its appearance, both adults and children. And they have sort of the Nosferatu look. They have longer skulls than us, pointed ears, longer fingers.
Not very attractive.
No, they're somewhat recondite in their personalities. They're very wary of human beings from Earth. And I would sometimes see them looking out of a doorway or through a window.
Did you have to have breathing apparatus on? What was that like?
Well, actually, I found that I could breathe on the surface of Mars. With a group of young people who time has shown ended up being a fairly illustrious group of individuals.
Including Barack Obama, right?
Yes, Barry Obama and I on the surface of Mars.
So let me start by being extremely clear. Scouting missions to Mars, seeking new frontiers, it is an essential part of that quest. America's quest for a brighter future in space.
Now, I could see Matt Dredge's headlines tomorrow. Barack Obama was on the surface of Mars.
Yes, he is a president who has been on the surface of Mars.
You know he'll deny that.
He will, because he's been playing an insider game since we were students together in Major Dame's class.
Barack Obama, whose name at that time was Barry Soetoro, he was identified along with Andy as future presidents.
Yes. What happened was Barry Soetoro stood up to talk to Ed Dames, and looking at me and said, how does it feel being in a Mars training class like this with a future president of the United States?
Do you have any political aspirations?
George, actually, I've decided to run for president in 2016. I'm going to give my Mars...
Are you really?
Yes, I'm going to be announcing...
Now, if you win, you should, based on this futuristic glimpse into Mars, right?
All we know is that I was informed that at some point in my life I reached the White House. I've decided to run in 2016. I think that's the right timing.
What party will you run for?
I'm going to be seeking the Democratic nomination for president. I'm a Washington Democrat. I'm essentially a Kennedy Democrat, that is to say a JFK Democrat.
We're going to take phone calls with you, Andy, here on Coast to Coast. You're welcome to Coast to Coast. Hello?
Yeah, hello.
Ed, is this you?
Roger.
Major Ed Dames with us?
Roger.
Well, it's good to have you here. This is interesting. Andrew's been on the show before. They claimed that they were part of a CIA program. They went to Mars, and that they say, Ed, and I might as well ask you, that you were the one who conducted the Mars training program.
That's news to me.
That's news to you. Huh. All right. So you're basically saying, though, that you weren't part of this Mars training program.
The Pegasus project doesn't exist. No, right. Not in our day-to-day reality. Maybe in somebody else's. Not in terms of the reality that we see with our eyes.
All right, let me bring Andrew in for just a moment. Andrew, you heard him. He said he wasn't there.
I have great respect for Major Dames. I think it's fair to say that he is entitled to his understanding of his past. My position, especially after researching my experiences in Project Pegasus, and even finding one of my Mars co-experiencers, Barry Obama was a cool guy from Hawaii.
So you're saying the Major was there, taught you, even though he says he wasn't there?
Yes. I mean, I could literally take you to the spot at Lawrence Junior High School in Chatsworth, California, when I had my first conversation with Barry Soetoro, and then in the second conversation going into the...
Well, and that's another thing. Let me ask you this, too, Ed. One of the things that Andy pointed out is that you had in your class Barack Obama.
He's got me. He caught me. I don't remember Barack so much, but I do remember Elvis and Lady Gaga. I remember them distinctly.
All right.
Well, you could
back of my hand too. And you know what? During the time they said I was teaching them this BS.
No, I'm sorry. I just don't believe that. I believe that's a military cover story.
Great.
And I don't need to learn remote viewing. I've done time
do me a favor and don't include me in any of your fantasy delusions in the future. No more emails. Okay.
Well, that's no. I didn't send you emails. I sent you emails, Major Dames, inviting you to join the Truth Movement.
I don't want your invitation.
Okay, let's
start a cult or do something useful.
No, I'm just describing what I did for your government, and I wasn't even paid. And we went up there at great risk to ourselves, and I'm proud of what we did.
All right, Ed, hold on for a second, Andy. I don't want this to get into a bloodbath here. Ed, I'm glad we got you on to explain your side of it, and I want to thank you for that. Ed Dames, of course, has been a wonderful guest for years here on Coast to Coast. And he's got a disagreement. He says he was not there. And Andrew, you're going to stick to your own guns, aren't you?
I'm sticking to my guns, and I'm not going to call Major Dames a liar, but I am under a duty to stand in my truth and tell it.
Okay. So you don't think your presidential hopeful campaign has been railroaded at all with the Major, huh?
Using the notion that real experiences are either delusional or fictive somehow. I mean, you could say that about anything. You could say that the last McDonald's you went into was a UFO that had been made to look like a McDonald's. I mean, all claims of any kind of historical experience are rebuttable by the cheap allegation that the person is either delusional or they're lying. He stated Project Pegasus never existed. How could he make such a statement?
Okay, let's go back to the phones. Final calls here. Michio Kaku, professor of theoretical physics at the City University of New York. Dr. Kaku, how are you?
Very good, George.
You're a believer in time travel, but is it possible it's happening?
Well, this guy said, I am the time traveler. I have come back from the future to warn you about the Large Hadron Collider.
By grabbing Mountain Dew and throwing it in a kitchen blender.
Yeah.
Andy? As you know, Dr. Michio Kaku, physicist, has been on the program a lot in talking about Project Pegasus, and he said it is fiction. Your thoughts?
Right. Well, let me say I regard Dr. Kaku as one of our most brilliant thinkers and philosophers. So I don't mean to disparage him in the slightest. I admire him very much. I met Dr. Kaku on the surface of Mars. We were trained, almost trained in a Pavlovian way, basically, to be entirely refractory to the idea of ever telling anybody outside the project what we were involved in. Back to the Future.
I have come back from the future.
Back to the Future.
Thanks for watching.